All right, we are back. It's time for part 2 of our weekly test show. And now let's see what else we can put Tom and Ben up against here as we resume. I'm going to make sure I let this guy charge. I've actually got a couple of ideas of something we should try. Let me get the Elkhart camera back up and running first. There we are. Okay. So first will be another sample from the Weather Radio Canada shutdown video.
Weather Radio Canada, station X, time is Tuesday. Note that when look at. Please note.
This is the first thing. And to ensure that this goes on for a longer period of time, or make it shorter rather, we'll put it at 120%. And that's not all. As for the second half, where's that jingle? This one. Yeah, this is going to be fun. So we're going to play around with two things at once. And we're going to try to speed this up here a little bit. All right. We will start with this End of Weather Radio Canada sample while I go take care of my other two shows, The Perfect Line and Flip Side. Again, that's because Greatest Average is being preempted this week for reasons I will not state. All right. Let's get these two to work.
Please note that Weather Radio and AccuWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Weather Radio and AccuWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. AccuWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Note that Weather Radio and AccuWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Weather Radio and AccuWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that Weather Radio and AccuWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that Weather Radio and AccuWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Weather Radio and AccuWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. weather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Radio and weather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and hello weather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Please note that weather radio and hello weather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Note that weather radio and hello weather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and hello weather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Note that weather radio and hello weather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and hello weather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and hello weather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and hello weather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and hello weather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and hello weather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and hello weather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and hello weather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and hello weather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and hello weather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and hello weather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and hello weather are no longer in service. radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Weather radio and weather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and weather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and weather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and weather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and weather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and weather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and weather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and weather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and weather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and weather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and weather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and weather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and weather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and weather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and weather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and weather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and weather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and weather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and teleweather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and teleweather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and teleweather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and teleweather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and teleweather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and teleweather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and teleweather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and teleweather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and teleweather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and teleweather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and teleweather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and teleweather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and teleweather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and teleweather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and teleweather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and teleweather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and teleweather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Weather radio and teleweather are no longer in service. A A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. The tunnel weather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and teleweather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and teleweather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and teleweather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and teleweather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and teleweather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and teleweather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and teleweather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and teleweather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and teleweather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and teleweather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and teleweather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and teleweather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and teleweather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and teleweather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and teleweather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and teleweather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Radio and teleweather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast Available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that Weather Radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that Weather Radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that Weather Radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that Weather Radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that Weather Radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that Weather Radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that Weather Radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that Weather Radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that Weather Radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that Weather Radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
That Weather Radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that Weather Radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that Weather Radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that Weather Radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that Weather Radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that Weather Radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. note that weather radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Note that weather radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that weather radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Note that weather radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that weather radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Note that weather radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that weather radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Note that weather radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that weather radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Note that weather radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that weather radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Note that weather radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that weather radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Note that weather radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that weather radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Note that weather radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that weather radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Note that weather radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that weather radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that weather radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that weather radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that weather radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that weather radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that weather radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that weather radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that weather radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that weather radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that weather radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that weather radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that weather radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that weather radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that weather radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that weather radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that weather radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that weather radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that weather radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that weather radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that weather radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio. Please note that weather radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Weather radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that weather radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that weather radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that weather radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that weather radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that weather radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that weather radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that weather radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that weather radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that weather radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that weather radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Weather radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca. Please note that weather radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that weather radio and AlloWeather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that weather radio and AlloWeather shallow weather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that weather radio and teleweather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that weather radio and teleweather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Please note that weather radio and teleweather are no longer in service. A radio marine forecast is available via the Canadian Coast Guard. Visit canada.ca.
Alright, well that was fun, but I got one more thing to put these two through. Yeah, that's the the Empire Today jingle parody thing. That's a good one. That's a fun one. That truly is. Alright, well, we are done with that. And we're going to get to the word game here in just a moment. There you go. Everything is still saying Yuma, and this logger is still saying Yugi. This is great. I wonder what song is playing backward. I wonder what song is playing backwards right now. It's Join Our Circle that's playing backwards. Jeez, that was loud. It's Join Our Circle playing backwards. Backwards. There it is. It's Join Our Circle playing in reverse. This was a fun April Fool's joke, honestly. Yeah, I'm gonna get ready to take these stations out here. But before we decide what where we go from here, let's see. 88. We're also used in the 3D Space Cadet game. Exactly. I actually knew that from the very start. I knew that from the very start. Maelstrom. Backwards. So that was great. Seeing relaying warning from Yuma, relaying warning from Yugi. This is amazing. So this is great, hearing everything in reverse. It's great, we get to hear chiptunes in reverse. You can tell how excited I was to make that. Alright. Now let's go ahead and get to the word game here.
Search window. Search box. Navigation menu list. Name. WMBS word game dot text. Note.
No introduction, but that's the letters. Yeah, no introduction, but there's the letters for
Join our circle backwards.
backwards.
Menu item.
Oh my gosh, I misspelled backwards. Oh no, I misspelled backwards. And I also misspelled inauguration. I forgot to put the Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal theme songs in there. Oh my gosh. Well, this April Fool's joke didn't go how I wanted it to go, but well, wait, at least it's working the best. At least the best it is. Let's try tin. Tanag. Opening parenthesis, closing parenthesis. A tin. AGON. Atomagon. The micro is still hard at work here. Knit. Nida. Oh no, there's no T. Nita. Ningo.
Misspelled. Nitaningo.
Oh wait.
Enter. Misspelled. Nitaningo.
And now it's 10 forward, but going backwards.
10-4 backward.
10-4 backwards. This is great. Oh, speaking of the pinball game, darn it, I don't have it on the desktop. It's on the C drive, I know. Yep, here it is. Pinball. 3 of 67. Okay, don't want to go that far. How about TONNAGITI? And that's all the words I can think of. That's your word game for this week. Oh wait, no, that's not the one I wanted. No! And I didn't want full screen either. Here we go. Woo! Oh no. The hidden test Easter egg. Here, let's turn the music down so we can play the sound effects. I still love these sound effects. And since the Lockport stream is inactive right now, somebody's been able to start. I'm gonna have to let the SDR handle it. Let's see if it's close, but not quite. Message from Yuma. I love the sound of that. See if it'll work this time. It's probably gonna take its sweet time. There you go. It played the same sound effect multiple times. This is great. Oh, let's add more.
Opening parenthesis, closing parenthesis. Opening parenthesis, closing parenthesis.
Oh, I love this.
Severe thunderstorm warning from opening parenthesis, closing parenthesis.
Okay, I don't want to get too far into that because I know we want to get to the eBay scavenger hunt tonight. So, let's see. How much longer is this gonna go for? Oh, geez. Oh, okay. All right. It looks like this is gonna continue well through the night, and I see some of this could actually end up reaching Chicago. Now, let's see. They say that showers and a few storms will move across the area, and of course, no severe weather is expected because everything is, as I'm pretty sure everything will have weakened by then. So, and of course, they're still iterating about the possibility of a severe weather outbreak tomorrow. Threat for strong tornadoes along and west of I-39. So that's the main concern. But
flash flood warning from KEAX/NWS. Opening parenthesis, closing parenthesis.
There's another threat for severe weather Friday and Saturday, though the threats are conditional on placement and boundaries of timing. So that's all we're seeing right now for the outlook. But we do have our time window for when things can really get out of hand here. All right, now let me go ahead and actually yeah, so this is what we've been doing for, for the April Fool's joke this year. Well, first let me show you what John has done. If I go to his logger. Wow, it didn't take Paducah until 8 p.m. to run their evening test.
During potentially dangerous weather situations.
But I'm surprised they actually decided to go for it. That they actually ended up going for it. Yeah, he's changed a lot of the stuff on the logs. He changed a lot of stuff on there. But really, there's actually let's see. Actually, this is actually how I guess he changed the way certain characters are interpreted. So every letter O, it comes up as this string, and then U comes up as this string. So that's how. So I guess that's how John set his main up for this year's joke. Now, for this year's joke, I was gonna do it on just the main, but so yeah, late at night last night after we ended our show. In fact, well, after we ended our Roblox show, if I scroll up here to before all of this. Now I'll probably need to move up a little more. Yeah, I'll go ahead and close that because it's not like I'm going to touch it for much longer anyway. Yeah, here we go. So everything was sort of normal. So this bottom line here was actually remained the same. And then it's like so essentially for this, I've pretty much put this into like 3 separate stages. So this was stage 1, where I just changed the call sign to Yugi, and I mean the thing is just honestly simple. If you remember when we started doing the Yu-Gi-Oh! Power of Chaos game, I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about. Yugi Moto from the Yu-Gi-Oh! Franchise. And then it actually remained this way until we got to the end of the Central Time Zone, where I decided to make things even crazier. For stage 2, I went ahead and changed this line from WPLD to this, and then it says 2026 Jeslyn filed. Exactly the way the Lembine says. Exactly the way the Lembine says it. So Jeslyn filed with the exclamation mark. And that's not all. I decided, you know what? To fit with the theme, because John actually ended up changing his playlist on his main station for this year's April Fool's joke as well. So, in addition, I thought, you know what? Let's put the Yu-Gi-Oh! Soundtrack onto the main for 2 hours, and, I think that better fits with the theme. So, that's what happened. So, the main was doing Yu-Gi-Oh! For like 2 hours. However, on my micro, I believe I do have the complete log of everything that it was recording during that time. If we go here, in fact, I have to. Oh yeah, there it is. Yeah, there's all the stuff. Beyond Space Backwards. I misspelled inauguration. World of Yu-Gi-Oh! It never played the theme song. How disappointing. How disappointing. It didn't even play the theme song. I am very disappointed. But, yeah. I mean, there were actually other theme songs I wanted to throw in there, too, because I had GX, 5Ds, and Zexal on my secondary. I wanted to throw them onto the main, too. But I guess I just wanted to get this thing back up and running as quickly as possible, considering how late we were in starting the Mountain Time Zone, honestly. But hey, we did try. So yeah, this was doing that for like 2 whole hours through the Pacific Time Zone. And then by the time we got to 2 p.m., this is what it looks like now. So nothing much has changed. However, of course, for this third and final stage of this entire thing, I have decided to instead try some chiptune. I've picked 20 random songs from my collection. Only one of them is in low pitch and slow down. The rest of them are in reverse. The rest of them are played backwards. Yeah, the rest of them are played backwards. Inauguration, Utopic Dreams, 10 Forward, 5435, 10170, whatever it is. Those are just some of the many examples. I'm surprised WHC didn't even change his call sign this year either. Because he did that he changed the call sign last year for April Fools. I guess he did and then he set it back, or did he opt not to participate and I might have missed it. I don't know, but regardless, the call sign on there remains unchanged. So nothing much has changed with the call sign. Actually, let me take this off screen here. The level end and start sound effects in the Pacer Test audio track were also used in 3D Space Cadet. In fact, yeah, as I've said, that is something I've actually already known. I've known that from the very, very beginning. The very start. I've noticed it from the beginning. And in fact, I recognized this. I actually remember I recognized the sound effects right away. But yeah, going back to the April Fool's joke. So when we got to the 2 p.m. hour, and when I started doing the chip tunes in reversed, that's when I began to throw all the severe weather stuff in there. And yeah, my main PC couldn't really handle all those monitors running at once. So what did I end up doing? Moving them over to the micro. All at once, the micro, yeah, it really didn't handle everything. So, I mean, there was like a gazillion monitors in there. I don't want it using up all that bandwidth, on just one device and one device alone. So what did I do? Well, there's a reason why my secondary exists. There's a reason why this exists. It is so it can accommodate for the large number of monitors, for a severe weather event, for a particular severe weather event. Now, I wasn't planning on doing this, but yeah, I decided let's have the secondary participate in this too. So I've changed its call sign to Yuma. Yeah, from Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal. So the secondary has the main character from Zexal, while the primary has the main character from Duel Monsters, or in other words, the original Yu-Gi-Oh! From the early 2000s, the one that many grew up with. Nobody else is changing anything, but yeah, I thought I changed something up, as I said, for April Fools. Why is it not letting me clear? Okay, it looks like it cleared, but it just hasn't updated. That's alright. But again, really, the idea is the same. The higher risk stuff on the main, the lower risk stuff on the secondary. Now, in terms of handling, SDR stuff for tomorrow's event, this time I'm going to let my WR400 take the helm, because I'm pretty sure this thing has the audio. Let's see, this does have an audio out jack. It should have an audio out jack, so I can actually output something. Yeah, there is a headphone jack, but it's covered by some plastic. So if I really want to do that, I would have to take the plastic piece off, and then of course, I can just plug it into the SDR, and it will handle everything from Lockport. I'm not doing my Bearcat again because it turns itself off after every alert, and then it doesn't receive everything else afterward. So I guess in some way, I've learned my lesson. What about the EAR-10? Yeah, it doesn't have that. It doesn't have that kind of function. The WR-120, I could try it. Cloning port. Particularly, I just do ones that have the headphone jack. So, yeah. As such, I'm going to do my WR400 for this one. So, when we get closer to the event starting tomorrow, that is when I will start up my SDR receiver, or my SDR thing, or whatever, and I will get that up and running, and have Lockport be broadcast down. Have the Lockport go through the SDR. And also, I think I forgot to mention too, I also finally let my logger do max weather now that I know what time they actually end up testing. So 4 p.m. Central Time is when max weather sends out a weekly. And now that we're on the topic of weather radios and stuff, Max Weather is actually one of the few projects that came after the discontinuation of Weather Radio Canada about 2 weeks ago. Actually, 2.5 weeks ago, technically. And then I found out that yesterday morning, all of the remaining transmitters were turned off. So all of those remaining transmitters were shut down. So that then completes the at this point then that officially completes the end of Weather Radio Canada mini-series, which began on February 23rd when they announced the shutdown. And then, of course, since then, I've been getting all the remaining, the last Weather Radio Canada tests and alerts that were ever sent over it. It's disappointing that Canadians now do not have a emergency lifeline. But, I mean, it is very, very good. I'm very glad to hear that there are some people out there that are trying their own project to keep this, to sort of keep the legacy of the service alive for years to come. The latest project in this saga is by a very familiar person known as SSPWXR. This is the same person who wrote Weather HDS1, HDS2, and just recently the revamp that we're using now on the weather scan. So he actually ended up creating a weather radio system entirely in Python. And I've actually tried to test this out a little earlier during my evening class tonight. However, of course, I have not been able. Well, I've had some mixed success, mainly with trying to get Python set up and conflicting with an Ubuntu installation. But I already have a more updated Ubuntu install, so I can just try it again on there. And then eventually, because I actually still have that Ubuntu virtual machine, so I could just try it out on there and, see how good it is before I end up rolling it out before I roll it out to my main systems. But which PC is going to end up hosting it, though? Most likely it's going to be my small form factor. Most likely. So yeah, it's most likely going to be my small form factor PC. And what I'm also thinking is I'll also set up an SH script that will execute, that will run the, that's going to run the thing for the service, as well as the Asmara thing all at once. I don't think it's going to work, though, but I could try. Maybe it'll work. I don't think it will. But this is another, and this actually is the closest thing, closest to more accurate thing with weather radio as much as possible. And of course, there's the reasons why he made this. A disclaimer about you are responsible for misuse of any of these things, because it does generate valid headers. And then some of the more important features, and then some features that he actually planned on implement. I think he did actually implement a lot of this stuff already. And in fact, I found that out in the config file here. If we go down, and I can just change this, I can just change all this stuff to, I'll probably just clear all this other information here, and this is all the on-demand stuff. And then I can just, let's see. And then I can, so pretty much here I can just change all this stuff as need be. I can change the call sign to a call sign that I so desire. I can change the time zone. I would change this to NWS so that way it fits. And then I'll see if I can disable. Let's see. If it is 0, 1, or undefined, it will broadcast all items in this language before switching to the next language. So pretty much then I would just have to eliminate French. So yeah, with that being the case, pretty much I would have to eliminate French from this, which is why I'm going to test this out just to make sure that everything works. So I just want to set it up exactly as it should be. But of course, I'll make a backup of this. Then if something goes wrong, of course, just like with Asmara, I can revert back to a working configuration and it'll all be fine. And then, of course, I can change... And then, of course, I can change this to the proper province state. So I believe I can just change this to Illinois or something. And then these are for additional locations if they want to be included. And then this is for the cap thing. That's for IceCast. And then this CP thing, this is for alert ready stuff, which I'm going to disable because I don't follow alert ready, and besides, my logger would not be able to take alert ready stuff. It wouldn't be able to accept alert ready stuff. And then I can filter cap alerts to anything. So with these severities, I can just block them if I so desire. And then I can turn this on too if I so choose. And then I can just enable any states. This is active alerts. So pretty much then I can have this serve as a secondary, weather service kind of thing. Some of the stuff that you can't get off of, let's say there's no stream for that other service. I can just do that, and then I can change this call sign to whatever I desire. And then this is actually what I've been wanting to set up, an automated weekly test off of my logger. So I can just change the day of the week from Wednesday to Saturday. So I can have it go out at 12 noon. And then monthly tests, I can have it go out at noon as well. Or I can just turn the monthly test off completely. Yeah, or I could just turn the monthly test off completely, and then I won't have to worry about that. Then WXR is the 1050 hertz, and pause is the alternating 500 millisecond tones. And basically, this is just all the information. An egg timer is the old attention tone used in the Weather Radio Canada network before the AVPAD system was replaced. And then attention tone overrides. So override the default attention tone for specific area codes. If an event code is not listed here, the default attention tone is used. So I can turn this off if I so choose, and then I can have transmitter primary on. We send out. I could actually do that. Just send that out just to make sure that everything is, everything's working. So yeah, I could probably send that out just to make sure that everything's working properly. And then there's a bunch of other things too. This is for English. This is English Canadian, and then these are all of the male and female stuff, and then this is for French. And then this is for future implementation. So this is for other stuff. And then this is the fallback order. So yeah. Like I said, I'm gonna do some more. I'm just thinking, yeah, I'm gonna test this out a little further. But as I said, there's some other things that I want to get done. Like, for instance, that Minecraft project. You know, like those signs in that Minecraft world. I really want to get that done. So I'm thinking that probably tomorrow night I could do some more testing on it. But I mean, we do have that severe weather outbreak too. I almost forgot to mention that. So tomorrow night, then, well, as I said, tomorrow I'll be working on the signs all day. I'll be working on the signs the whole day tomorrow. I'll work on getting that done. Let's see, because I've actually laid out the groundwork for the next routes. I believe I said I was going to do 301 next, and then I would do 89 after that. So essentially, I've already laid out the groundwork for the next interstates in line to have their signs installed. So it'll be after I get those signs installed, then I'll get to installing bridges. Then I'll actually get around to building those. Then I'll get around to building those bridge spans. Once they've all been built, then the project would then be declared. Then basically the project would be declared complete. So the project would then be declared complete. So for the bridges, what I'll do is I'll just lay down the piers first. I'll lay the piers down, and then probably the next day or so I'll put up the spans. I'll just put up all the bridge spans and everything. So I'll do it on all sides. Yeah, I'll do it on. I think I only have to do it on 2 sides, so it's not going to be that bad. But once I have that done, and once I have the Trial Series remake all filmed, there is a final project for one of my college classes I gotta get taken care of. So I'll get to work on that when I can. And then after that is all done. But I did say that Thursday night, once I get that one road done, then it'll be very likely then I'll continue testing out that. I'll test out that Hayes weather radio thing a little more. Alright, so I'm going to go take care of something really fast here, and then we will get to the eBay scavenger hunt. Alright, so that's done now. I think I actually, I might want to keep the screenshots in hand if I have them already. So. Yeah, there's a before and after. yet I want to do this as well. Yeah, because I really want to send those pictures over, but I'm not going to do that right now. In fact, whatever the Lembine's doing, I'm not going to bother him. And also, we're going to get to Deal or No Deal here in a few minutes. But for right now, it's time for the eBay scavenger hunt. We were going to get to this earlier, but as I've said, we never did. So let's do it now while we have the opportunity. All right, let's see. Sasmex radio. Let's see if there's a Sasmex receiver up on eBay somewhere. No, just a bunch of radio cabinets and things like that. So yeah, nothing interesting. All right, let's see what else we can find. We have all those Dell Precisions. Let's see what other Precisions we've got. Oh, here's an old Dell Precision. This is a 7510. That's it being tested. 6th gen, so that's definitely Windows 10. Hard drive not installed, yeah. But so I guess they must have put a hard drive in there after the fact. And yeah, there's your proof it's Windows 10. Windows 10 Pro. Only to reinstall the operating system. This disk is not for reinstallation of programs or drivers. And here's a little more modern Precision. This one's a 5570 with a 12th gen Intel i7 CPU. Here's a 7560 with an 11th gen Intel processor. There's its basics there. And this is an early 11th generation, so that's when Windows 10 was still the latest before 11 came out. Here's another 5570. This one has an i9 CPU. Here's a 5540 with a 9th generation Intel processor, and it has 11 on it, because it's compatible with it, of course. A Windows XP style desktop. And then there's all the looks of it on the outside. And then we have this 5750, 10th gen, Windows 10. This has 11. And I guess that USB-C cable is what charges the laptop. Because it has a USB-C charger instead of one of those exclusive barrel bricks. Now, there's supposed to be a 1 there. This is a 13th generation i7, like I have. And see what version of 11 this is, but that's its original power cable. And then the rest of these are, let's see, below fair. This is a 7680. This one has a 13th gen i7, has a hard drive, but there is no operating system on it. Yeah, that's the vPro sticker. So it looks like you could put a 2.5 inch drive in there. During our testing, we could not get this unit to connect. We think it may need a new Wi-Fi chip, so it's just that the Wi-Fi driver inside of this machine is malfunctioning. So as such, I need to buy a new Wi-Fi card for the machine. So yeah, at this point, in order to get, full-fledged Wi-Fi connectivity, I guess whoever gets that would need to purchase a new Wi-Fi card for it. Some distortion there, but it is otherwise refurbished. So yeah, that's what it looks like there. What else have we have? A Precision 5550 with a 10th Gen i7. And it looks like it's a refurbished model. I can't tell if it's 10th gen or 11th generation. Yeah, that's a Windows 10 logo. But on the keyboard, that's a Windows 11 logo. So, what is it? Is this like a refurbished PC that already has 11 installed? Well, I'm guessing that is the case, but it's a 15.6-inch screen. It does not have RAM. It does not have a hard drive. This one is only for parts. This 5560 is for parts only. Display not working. So the PC does turn on, however the display does not. So the only way really to get it working, well, it does work. So I mean, you could just plug it into an external monitor and it would work, and you would be able to see what it's outputting. So here's a 9th Gen 3541. And I can tell this is 25H2 because of the new battery thing. There's the CPU measurements. 32 gigs of RAM. The 512 gig SSD. So there's an NVIDIA Quattro GPU, and then there's the other one, which is just the integrated graphics. And then this is the diagnostic results, saying that all tests have passed. And then we have a 7520, which has no hard drive, an i7 processor, and then we have this Precision 7510 with Intel Xeon processor. Yes, because Precisions were also offered with a Xeon processor. That's an old Dell logo, so I can tell it's not compatible with 11. So, I mean, there's actually quite an easy way for me to tell as to whether it is compatible with Windows 11 or not. There's a pretty easy way for me to tell. Wait, am I full screen? Oh, there we go. I guess it didn't like me in full screen view, but alright. I guess I didn't see it until now, but okay. Moving on to the 7550 with the 10th gen. It has 11 on it. Of course it does. Alright, let's see what else we've got. How about the Dell Latitude line of laptops? This is a 7390 13-inch PC with a 8th Gen i5 processor, which is compatible with 11. Here's a 5320 that has an 11th Gen, later 11th Gen, so late 2021 into early 22. So this is when Windows 11 was just released. So I can already tell that PC is beginning to show its age. Here's a 7200 2-in-1 laptop tablet PC. Eighth Gen i5 processor, 8 gigabytes of RAM, 128 gigs of storage, 11 Pro integrated graphics. Nothing special there about the specs. Cyber Special, I'm guessing this is for like Cyber Monday or something. They haven't changed it. Or is that something else? I don't know. Then we have the 7430. So there's a lot of more modern Latitudes. So there's a lot of modern Latitude laptops popping up on eBay all of a sudden. I mean, this is as modern as you can get. 13th generation, 12th generation, 11th generation. So this is as modern as it gets. There's the Windows 11 logo. Of course, the keyboard that came with my new desktop has the 11 logo on it, but that keyboard is on my 3670 right now. Yeah, that keyboard is being utilized on my 3670 as of the moment. This one has a 10th generation. It's a 7410. So HW info. Here's Dell's Latitude rugged line. That of which I never have seen before. This one's in orange. Is this a 1 terabyte SSD or is this a... Yeah, it says SSD capacity, so this is a 1 terabyte SSD that's inside of there. Probably SATA though or something. Here's a 7420 again with 11. I wonder what my part-time job will have for me this year, but we'll see. Ownership date. About a date of November 24th, so that was exactly after about a month after Windows 11 was released. So it does have the RTM release of 11 on there. This one is a 5520 i7 vPro, Windows 11 logo, and that's the out-of-box experience. And this is an old version of 11, or is it? Really, that's the only kind of damage that is there, but I mean, it's understandable because this thing's only a few years old. At 1.8 gigahertz, that is totally wrong. That's totally wrong. It's at 3 gigahertz, so that info is completely incorrect. This one actually has a touch screen. It says it has a touch screen, but here's an E7250. Here's an E5470 with only a 6th gen. It is on Windows 10 Pro. And there's where the track point thing in the keyboard would normally be. That's where the track point that is normally embedded into the keyboard would end up. So I see Dell took the same idea from Lenovo on that. 5590. There's a 7450. This is actually a much more modern, a much more recent one. Because this one has the Copilot key right here. So right here, this is the Copilot key. And that's its full specs there. 6400. Yeah, that's much faster than... So this is actually as recent as it gets here. Core Ultra 5, 256 gigs of storage, the Intel built-in integrated graphics, 16 gigs of RAM. That's pretty fast actually for, what it is. Windows logo. That's Windows 11. However, that logo, just like with Windows 10 or Windows 8, that would only be seen if this is a Pro PC. You would only see it on machines that came shipped with Windows Pro. This 7320 detachable. Yeah, it says no SSD, no operating system, there's no keyboard, and it has a BIOS password. BIOS password cannot remove. So the battery holds a charge. So that's what that's about. And then we have another 7430 with a 12th gen i7 CPU. There's a little dent there in that corner, but otherwise it's in good condition. Just some scratches and scuffs, but that's all right. But it's not the pretty much it's not really the outside. It's really the inside of the laptop that counts. If it works on if the machine itself actually works, if it actually turns on, it actually turns on, it posts, it loads an operating system. As long as it does what a laptop is designed to do, or should do, rather, if it does what an ordinary PC should do, then it works. Looks like this is a my goodness, how many of these Latitude 5420s does this one have? But we can scroll down and get all the information. That's an 11th gen, so I can tell that is a more recent, much more recent PC. All right, here's a 5310 with a 10th generation chip, Windows 11. All right, now before we move on to the next slide here, oh yeah, I was about to see. So Norman continues the Tornado Watch until, let's see, we got watch number 88 that goes till 2 a.m. This Tornado Watch goes till 1. Then we have another one that goes till midnight. Watch number 85 already expired. Watch 84 also already expired. All right. So, again, the plans for the rest of the night tonight for me. All right, so let me go ahead and get the virtual machine loaded up. Yeah, there we go. So there's the Marine warning going over the secondary right now. All right, so as I've said here, the remaining plans for tonight is following our show. I'm going to get following the show, I'm going to see if I can make some final, do some final preparations on the new website before I launch it, which I plan to on April 6th, which will be Monday. So I'm going to release the website around that time, and then those that try to visit the Google site, then I'll just redirect them over to the new one, and I of course will update the description to add that there as well, because I noticed the old name is still present, but I will fix that once I get the new site together. And now, some final thing here before we get to the 10 o'clock hour. I see Chicago had updated their outlook just a few minutes ago to mention that severe weather is not expected tonight with the coming of what's going on over in Missouri. And then they're also talking about 2 different severe weather risks. Level 3 out of 5, that's for tomorrow. And then Friday only being a marginal, so level 1 out of 5. And then they're talking about possible Friday afternoon to just Saturday evening, so. And then, of course, level 2 out of 5 for the Lake Michigan areas. So, for what that looks like here, we definitely are going to have quite an event on our hands for we are definitely going to have quite an event on our hands for tomorrow. So, again, as I've said earlier, I'm going to have my WR400 connected up via the audio cable to the small form, well, not to the small form factor, but this time to the primary PC. I'm not going to do it through the small form factor. So, of course, the best thing to do is just make sure that it gets good reception and whatnot. So, does this one have a headphone jack? It does, but it's labeled as earphone. And, I mean, I could try it through there, but with how long the siren runs on there, there's not going to be enough, of the message. Or we could try the recom. Or we could give the recom a try. I would just change that over to Lockport and have it do all the stuff. So for now, it's very likely I'm just going to do the WR400. I'll just do that radio and have it handle everything for Lockport. And have it handle everything for Lockport, for the whole duration of the event. So that's really what I am planning on doing. So that's what I'm planning on doing. Now, we're going to take care of one more thing here for just a quick moment. Okay. Well, that's been taken care of. So, yeah. We definitely are going to have quite an event on our hands here. Now, as for the main station, I've already, on my main system, I've already set everything back. So let's take a moment and change the rest of this stuff back over. So let me add in tonight's automated tests. So of course I'll hit the reset button at midnight, and then of course I'll restore the utilities backup file. I'll make sure to put all the other information back on all the other loggers. So the main, on the other hand, is all set to go. Now going over to, oh, and I gotta switch the music back too. I almost forgot. So I'm gonna clear this off, and then change, well, I don't need that config file anymore anyway, and then change the call sign back to the way it was before. Now, I don't think I swapped the music out, didn't I? Yes, I did not. Now, is this the more recent version? No, it isn't, because it has all those zone identifiers in there. So I'm just going to go ahead and toss the thing. And instead, I'm going to grab the stuff from the network share on my main system. So map network drive. PC data 1. Okay, here we go. All right, there we go. So I'm just going to copy over the songs from here throw the April Fool's track away. So I'm just going to let it copy over all of the songs from there, and then I'll throw them back into the onto the main thing, and then we will be all set to go with that. So while we have a little bit of time here before, we transition to the before we transition into our last game of the night here, I was thinking that that's about enough of looking at all of these devices and things like that. And let me load up my Ubuntu virtual machine that I have set up, because I actually used that very same virtual machine to test out seasonal weather. Now, again, I'm not going to. Oh, that's right. It's fully maximized, so the folks watching will not be able to see it. Will not be able to see anything on the screen. So yeah, this was the same installation that I tried to set up seasonal weather with. So again, I'm gonna let the songs finish copying over, and then I'll get everything transferred back. 24.04, that's like a fallback. But yeah, for now the logger is still, but for now, well, until about midnight, the loggers are still going to display Yugi and Yuma, and then afterward I will set it all back. Alright, so yeah, it must be that other one that I had set up. Alright, there we go, that one worked. So yeah, this is the same one that I used to try to set up seasonal weather. Well, I tried to set it up the best I could, but unfortunately I did not get very far in this process, honestly. But yeah, there was the virtual machine exactly as I left it. Yeah, exactly as I left it. Now, mainly the issue I had with it was setting up IceCast and whatnot, so let me open up Firefox and grab that repository again. Wait, wrong URL. Okay, there we go. So, going to that GitHub repository. Okay. And then, let's see, it's Haze. Yeah, it really doesn't like me, honestly. Well, sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But I've been able to do it in private mode. And I believe I've been able to get around it by going into private mode, so yeah, history, and then I can just open up private mode, and then I can try again with whatever I was doing. So yeah, sometimes going into private mode will work. And this time it did work. Okay. So I can grab this and we'll download the zip file. Oh yeah, that's it reminding me that, of course, even in private mode, when you download something, it's going to stay on the device, but It's not like I care about that. Alright, so we're going to extract its files. And then I believe I set IceCast up on here already when I tried to test this out. So let's see. Okay. Can't remember if I set IceCast up on here or not. I guess I did. Okay. Now I gotta remember what that URL was. Okay, so I got that correct. So good. That's one thing already taken care of. So the IceCast server is active, and I think this was about as far as I got in that process. So then I need to change the directory to the Haze Weather, and then install the requirements. But it says that it cannot be found, so I would have to run that install command. And this was actually the problem I ran into. I got a bunch of 404 not found errors. I'm guessing it was probably something to do with the school network or something, because I did try this out on a school PC, but now, well, in a virtual machine, but trying this out now on a home PC, yeah, it seems like it's going to work much better, so. But first, I just want to make sure that this thing natively works. Okay, so now that it's been installed, now we can install the requirements that we need. Oh, this says it's being externally managed. So then we got to put in break system packages to bypass the warning. And then this is where it begins. So this will then start downloading and installing the requirements for the thing to work. And then I guess after all of that is set and done, then we can just go ahead and run the main, and we'll be good to go. But there is some stuff that we would need to update though in the config file, which is then where it redirected me to. So I'll have to. So now you're not seeing any of this. I'm just explaining here as things are happening. So you're not seeing the progress happen. I'm just explaining everything, what it's doing in real time. So I mean, there's a lot of requirements it's got to find, and I think I might have better luck with this one compared to seasonal weather, because if you remember, when I tried to do the seasonal weather, there was a text-to-speech thing that I think it tried to install. It tried to run a makefile command, and it wasn't able to make it. I mean, I've tried everything, and it seems like it would not work. So instead, I ended up just removing that command completely from the script that installed everything, and I did try to get it to run, but with some success. However, unfortunately, yeah, not going to be as good as, but we'll see. So then, after all that is set and done, then we can just type python3 main.py to run the file. And then I'm pretty sure we're going to get some errors. Oh, it gave a playout error. Okay. So we have, so what do we got? Running on, okay, so the application did start. However, it says that module output, well, I can just turn all this stuff off here. So it says nominal, playout active for 1 feeds. So I think it's just 1, but I can configure, it's, let's see, module.tts failed to load Piper voice, error 2, no file or directory. So I mean, this is the furthest I've gotten in this process, which is good. So I mean, the thing is running. It's just that the voice that it's needed to run is not. So I can hit Control C to close the script, and then I can go over to the config file to make any other adjustments. I can change this to the dark style. I actually prefer the dark style over the light. But yeah, me personally, I prefer the dark over light, but it's okay. All right, so we have logging. So what do we have here? So I suppose this is where, so level info format text. So this is, so I guess this logs everything. And then playlist, so this is in order. So the order. So the TTL is how long it should last. So the alerts and how long they should play. And then, of course, so it does the alerts, then the ID, then the date and time, the current conditions, forecast, and then other bulletins. And then operator, I can just change that to whatever I want, but I'm not going to do that right now because I want to make sure that this works. And then WX on demand. Let's see, then he says, my plans for this is to have an asterisk call a webhook on this app. Oh, so he's actually trying to recreate both Weather Radio and Hello Weather that Environment Canada had running for 50 years before they had just shut both of those services down. Now, what do we have? Enabled true. I think this is for the on-demand thing. But that I'm going to turn off. So I'm going to turn that to false. Endpoint base, web panel. This is so you can access the panel and whatnot. True. If disabled, the panel, and in fact, I will change this. I'll change this to a different one. Needs to be at least 8 characters. Feeds ID. I'll change from Regina to Chicago. Switch data source to NWS. I'm going to keep the French on there for right now because I just want to make sure that this works properly. And then I can change this, and then this is the ID. Location code if data source is weather.gov. So I would assume I would change that to something like KLOT or something. And then CP is the alert ready. So I'm going to change that to false. And then I'm going to, oh wait, hold on. And then the NWS field, I'll change that to true. Icecast, blank will use feed ID. And then AL user, I suppose I would have to change it. So now I gotta find where Icecast is installed. See if I can find where its config file is. Because Icecast should be installed already. Let's see, we have admin. We have an XML file. Let's see, what does this do? Open with Firefox. The file cannot be read. Okay, cannot read the file. Open with text editor. And I try to open, let's say, open as administrator. There we go. So this is all the config stuff. So that's for the admin password. So then I would need to change the, let's see, password who. So I need to go back over here and change that password. SSL is false. Audio device is false. I'm going to leave that alone. And I'm going to disable this because I'm going to disable output onto there. I'm going to disable that. This binary, I'm going to disable that as well. So I'm going to turn that to false. And then this is Alert Ready's cap server, so I'm going to change that to false. Use feed location. So whether to filter alerts based on the locations. If true, only match that match the same locations codes of the feed locations will be included. So I'm going to actually turn this to false because I really want this to do, the whole thing nationally. And then this is all the block stuff. And then NWS cap, I'm going to change that to true. And then the weekly test, I'll keep this on Wednesday. Monthly test, I'll leave that enabled. Default attention tone. Transmitter primary, I'm going to leave that off. I'm going to turn the alert ready thing to false. Use system defaults. This is about the Piper voice text, but it does look like I think we're good here. So we'll go ahead and save it. All right, let's see how much farther we get this time. We have, let's see, error opening output. Okay, so I would need to change the I need to change the server in the config file from the default one to mine. So I'm gonna switch this to whatever the IP address is of this virtual machine. So I would find that out. Advanced network configuration. Let's see. There was a command somewhere. Yeah, again, the thing is, I'm not used to Linux. So that's why it's taken me a little longer to navigate around it. But it says failed to load voice, fetches the bulletins. However, it's trying to load a voice that's not present. It says it can't load the English voice and it can't load the French voice. So we need to switch the server to mine. Let's see if I remember what that command was. Yeah, that's... Here we go. So this will give me the information for the virtual machine. So now we need to go back to the file and change the host to this. Okay. And let's see what happens now. Okay, so now instead of authentication failed, we're getting connection refused. I'm guessing it's because we're running off of a different port than what we're supposed to be running off of. So let's switch it to port 8000 and see what we get now. Okay, looks like this time we have starting web panel, cap alerting disabled, waiting for initial data fetch, no location ID. Well, that I can fix, that I can take care of. So then I would just need to open up that page in order to find it. And then if I refresh the page, the IceCast is not showing up. The IceCast is not showing up on the page. Okay. So what about instead? What if instead we type in that address instead of localhost? What if we do that? What changes do we get? And it looks like we don't get much of a difference. So we weren't getting IceCast errors. And then it says starting web panel. Oh, that shut the whole thing off. I'm just too familiar with that command. So we would have to type that special address into the box. And there we go. It is, let's see, it has loaded up. And then it knows that I'm connecting to the panel. It says enter the password for the panel as we've set up in the config file. And there we are. So this is the, let's see, so that's the operation panel. So here, this is really where we can do all the configuration stuff, and we can look at, so let's see what we have. File editor. Select file from sidebar to start editing. So we can edit stuff directly here, and then same broadcast. This is really here where we can change anything. So audio message. So let's see. So the IceCast isn't starting, but it looks like everything is functioning. So let's just type a whole bunch of gibberish in the box and send now. All right, and then it says weekly test queued. So that tells me that it's been queued. So pretty much I can pretty much just use this panel and send it out, and then I can just, you know, send stuff out manually, see what has happened and whatnot. Yeah, and it still says failed to load Piper voice. I'm going to see if I can get that figured out. Maybe that was something that did not load. It says Q1. No playlist entries generated yet. And it says RWT test fired. So that tells me that I have sent a weekly over. And then it's just updating as we, go along. So I could just take a look and update all this information where need be. It's probably because of the limitations of the virtual machine, but all right. So I'll test this out a little further after I get the website polished up. After I get the new website polished up. But yeah, the songs are almost back onto the main system now. So. It's uptime at 2 minutes. All right. And we're going to go and set this back to difficult. All right, let me pull the virtual machine up on screen and turn on the desktop audio. All right, let's get to it. While I continue testing this stuff out. What else have we got? So the IceCast thing is not appearing on the screen, or in the box is not appearing. Piper part of the... Was the Piper install part of the setup or something? Let me take a look and see if the Piper stuff was part of the setup. Is the game music too quiet or something? It's probably me, but let's see. Seems like an IceCast. So it looks like an IceCast status has. So it looks like IceCast has not started. Even in the XXL file, it does not appear to be updating. Just making sure everything's working. Oh, what do we have? Data pool. So basically, this web server is basically, basically a logger. So it's just logging everything that it's logging everything that has been that has happened on the station since it was started. So like RWT, web session, the web panel, and everything. And then what do we have? Q1, alert Q. It says, well, that's because the weekly was put into the queue, but since it could not find the text-to-speech files, the test alert that I had queued in there is not sending out. It's not going through, which is why that is. So I might want to check the requirements file. Folder is empty. Oh, here we go. I want to check the requirements file and see if Piper was even installed. So I can just open up the text editor and take a look. Okay, it says Piper was part of it, so it says it did not install, huh? What if I... Was it even installed on the system in the first place? Maybe if I go to ETC, it will show up under... Or maybe it's looking in the downloads folder and it's not finding it. Yeah, I don't even see that other folder on there. Yeah, I don't see it in here. Well, we got 2 Pythons. Yeah, it doesn't look like I see it in here. Where's it trying to look? It's trying to look in... It's trying to look in the, it's trying to look at that Piper voice directory. It's trying to locate it and it doesn't look like it's present. Well, let me see if it actually copied. So let me launch another terminal window. And what's the directory again? It is cd.pipertts. Yep, it says no file or directory. So yeah, so Piper's files, I guess, were not copied over. So that's what happened. So Piper's TTS files are not there. So probably have to rerun the requirements file again. So, or maybe try the sudo apt install. So let me go ahead and quit the station. And try running the command again. Okay, it says requirements already satisfied. What if I just change the requirements file to remove all of this, but leave Piper as it is? Okay, it says we're getting the same thing as before. Requirement already satisfied. Being installed to... Okay, it's probably trying to look for the files in its own in that directory, which is not there. So it must have installed in Python's directory. It says it's going to my home folder. So it's going to home. Where's my, where does it show my username? .local. So where is it going to? .local. .local.lib. So it's going to the lib folder. And yeah, I don't even see Piper TTS's files anywhere, so yeah, I don't see its files anywhere on here. Maybe if I just go back and search the entire drive, let's see what we get. Let's see if it finds it. It's probably not going to, but let's see if it finds its files. Okay, it found a file. Found a file named Piper. Oh, this was the Piper voice. This was the Piper voice synthesizer from when I was trying to set seasonal weather up. I think there might be I think that's probably why there might be a conflict going on. Oh, wait, here it is. Piper TTS 4.1. So this is the actual thing here. So maybe if I try this again with a clean installation, maybe if I try this again with a clean install, maybe I might get some, maybe I might have some better luck if I try this with a clean install. So maybe if I just wipe this whole Ubuntu, maybe if I just wipe the whole Ubuntu installation and then start from scratch, maybe I might get some, better luck out of this, but yeah, maybe I might get some better luck out of this. So, because it says it's trying to look for Piper in its directory. So let me go back to where it says it's trying to look for. Now let me search for the folder again. Let me look at the folder again. Okay, I see the songs have finished. What do we have in here? Okay, that's not the kind of Piper. This is Deck Talk, which was used for the seasonal weather thing. Wait, there was a, wait a minute, there probably was a, I guess there was an option I might have missed that said show file location or something. So now I got like two different Pipers on here. Yeah, I have like two different Pipers. I would search everywhere. And then it'll... Oh no, it's not. It's looking in that one folder. I want it to look in the hard drive. I want it to look in the entire hard drive to see if the file is actually, just to see where it's at. Properties. Here we go. This will give us where. So I guess there's probably a conflict going on between seasonal weather and this. That's probably what's going on here. So this is Piper's folder that was used for seasonal weather. So I think this is probably what's going on here. That must be what's going on. There's a conflict between seasonal weather and that. So how about we do this? Let's get rid of seasonal weather completely. I guess the delete key doesn't work here. Permission access files. Yeah, the owner of this is root, so I can't really change the permissions of this folder. I would have to log it as the root or gain administrator privileges to be able to throw the folder away and do other crap with it, but yeah, so that's probably what's going on. Because the Piper TTS thing is already installed inside of Seasonal Weather. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to revert to a snapshot. I'm not sure if this was, I'm not sure if this is just a clean install without anything. I'm not sure if this was after I first installed the distribution, or this came a bit afterwards. I don't know if this came before or came after. I have no idea, but let's take a look and see. Okay, so let me open up the home folder. I believe this is a totally clean installation, because I do not see anything. Why is it taking a while to load stuff? Yeah, because I just restored the snapshot, so that's probably why. Yeah, this thing is totally clean. There's no... I do not think Seasonal Weather is present anywhere in here. So opt. Yep, this is totally empty. So this is a totally... So yeah, this is a totally clean installation. So pretty much, I think this is a good place to start. So pretty much, I think this is a good place to start over. So yeah, pretty much, I think this is a good place to start over. And I just triggered the desktop thing or whatever. Alright, so let me try to grab the thing again. So I gotta go back to... So I gotta go back to the Firefox browser and re-download the GitHub repository, because of course I lost it. So once it comes up here, all right, there we go. Yeah, it's kind of slow because I just reverted it back. So to be able to actually, you know, get around GitHub, I'm gonna do Firefox in a private window. But as I've said, I'm explaining things as we go along, as everything's happening here. So go back to the GitHub website. You achieved a high score of only 198. Alright, well that is the last of our games, but we still have a little bit of time left here before we are done. So I'll go ahead and shut off the virtual machine. And I'll mute the speaker, because I no longer need it. Alright, so unfortunately we were not able to get a Deal or No Deal episode in this week. Unexpected, but it's alright. Once this thing listens to me. Come on. Okay. So let's grab that repository again. I think it could be better to just restart the virtual machine, or just to shut down and restart the entire virtual machine. I think that's probably the best thing we'd be able to do. Let's see here. I want to make sure I actually get the repository first before I do anything else with it. Okay, it lets me do stuff here. Okay, here we go. Download the zip file. All right. I'm gonna go ahead and shut the I'm gonna go ahead and turn the yeah, it's going kind of slow right now, so I think it's best to just turn it off and then on again, and maybe that might change something. Oh, that's right, it's Minnesota Monthly week this week. Oh yeah, we got Wisconsin's Monthly coming up later on tonight, and I want to make sure that I can change everything back over. Let me also pull the. I almost forgot to pull the Lombard camera back up. After all of this, after all this, let's see the Tavern Rail Cam. Here we go. All right, so let's try to boot it up again, and then not my network share, the Linux VM. And then I gotta go to where I have all the files for the songs. Yep. So all of this I'm gonna switch out with the main stuff, and I also almost can't forget to mention that I'm gonna switch the call sign back. In fact, I'm probably going to do that now on the config file, but I'm not going to hit save until. I am not going to hit save until I'm ready to actually reset the station. In fact, I'll be resetting both of them simultaneously. And that actually also reminds me, I forgot to add one more thing into here, and it has to do with the monthly tests for tonight. So it's going to be under, well, daily. We can just go ahead and clear all this out because the event's pretty much over. So then all those, damn it, I didn't add those. I got so distracted by the fact that today is April Fool's Day, playing around with Yu-Gi-Oh, and I forgot to put those in. But there we go. I've added the monthly test stuff in there. All right. So before I continue testing this out, of course, I want to say goodnight to Tom and Ben. Of course, I want to thank them both for being with us here on the show. Of course, it's nice when we have them with us. So, of course, I thank them both, and of course, we will have them back on the when we do the next episode, which will be next week. All right, so now back to testing out, trying to see if I can get this running for the final, for the last 10 minutes of our time here tonight before we are totally done. All right, so I have the repository, so I just need to extract the files. And I'll just copy this, move this over to the desktop, and we'll do all the work on there. Now, to install the prerequisites. So first we're going to install the IceCast component. So first we're going to install the IceCast components. All right, so it says yes, and we're just going to leave it at the default settings. So we're just going to leave everything at the default settings. It's probably going slow because there's like a whole lot of monitors on that on that other Linux virtual machine I got running. That's probably why it's going this slow. All right, so now we do apt install Python. So we install Python 3's pip component, which will allow me to install the requirements for Haze Weather to function. I'm going to go ahead and launch another terminal window while that's setting up. So then we'll go ahead and launch IceCast 2's component. And then I'll just do start IceCast 2. the enable command is what tells the IceCast server to start up automatically at to start on boot up. So to start on boot essentially. So essentially when the machine is turned on, the IceCast server will automatically start along with it. All right. So while we're waiting for these to set up here, of course, tomorrow is our backyard baseball game, and I will get back to work with Sorry and Big John's Wheel of Fortune. I'll get back to work on production on both shows. So, yes, I said I'll get back to production on both shows. I don't know how much of it I'm going to be able to get done tomorrow, but I'm going to try to get as much done as I can. But yeah, I'm going to try to do as much of it as I can. I'm just going to try to do as much of the production as I can. So I'm going to try to do as much of the production as possible in order to, because I want to get a lot of it done before the severe weather event begins to unfold. Now, of course, just like last week, we will not be able to do coverage of this event, as much as I hate to say it. But, as I have also mentioned, I will be running my SDR receiver with my main transmitter, Lockport, because the stream for it is down. I do not know if it's ever going to come back. I sure hope it does come back. But we'll have to wait and see. Alright, so back to this. Now I can switch over to the directory, and then I can run the command that installs the requirements for it. But it says there's already a externally managed environment. But again, we can just run that special handle to bypass the other stuff and just let it do its work. And while it does, I just want to make sure that it actually functions first. So now that the IceCast server is actually running, let's see. So once again, I would need to go into the config file and change out the mentions of change it to localhost :8000. I think in this case it would also be localhost, so I would have to change it out to localhost, not the IP. So hosts, I would change that to localhost. We'll leave it at the port as it is. Switch this password out. All right, and we will see what happens here. Once this is all okay, so it says downloading the Piper TTS file. So I guess there was a conflict. Between Piper and something else. Now, I think maybe it's because it's relying on I think it's probably because it's relying on a specific directory to even run all of this. So I think that's probably what's going on. It's relying on a specific directory, but the files themselves are actually in a completely different location. So that actually is probably what is going on here. So I just want to make sure that this actually functions right before I do anything else with it. So it did actually download it successfully. However, it's just not in the correct location. That's probably what's going on here. So I'm going to wait for that to finish. .local.bin, so that's probably where a lot of its stuff is hiding, which I suppose is visible from view. So I have to set it to, well, I guess you can't set hidden files, but yeah, because Linux, it's going to take me some time to, get fully used to if I ever put it on any one of my laptops. All right, so then all that's left to do now is run the Python command. And let's see what happens. We get playout, input sound device, raise OS error, port library not found. So this was actually the error we were getting previously. It says so it's looking for Python 3.12's files. So that's actually what it's looking for. So it's looking in, yeah, again, I'm thinking it's because it's in a completely different directory. So let's instead move the folder. Let's instead move the folder to the, not the main drive. Let's just move it to the users folder. See if I can actually do it. But I can make copy and paste. Permissions do not allow pasting files. Okay, so I can't do that there. I'll just go and paste it in my home folder instead. So, see if that gives different results. So then we'll run this, and we will try it again. Or maybe it was after I set up the config file. That's probably what's happening. But I can look at the, I can look in the config file and get all the details. So, I mean, it was working fine with seasonal weather earlier, so. But I guess we're at a point now where it doesn't seem like it wants to work. So. So now it doesn't look like it wants to work. Port audio library. It's looking inside the lib. So yeah, it's looking inside the lib folder for everything. Okay, there's Python's folder. Output. I think it's probably, I think that error probably means there's like no sound devices, to output on the system. So that probably is what might be happening here. Let's see. Audio device. Well, it is set to false. And I can turn this to false. Enabled. I can turn this to false. Okay, let's see what happens now. Same thing. Yeah, it seems like after setting up seasonal weather alongside this, it does not seem like there is too much of a difference. So probably, I mean, there is a sound card inside of here, but I mean, there is a sound driver, but it doesn't look like it's working right. But as I've said, I do plan on testing this out inside of Windows Subsystem for Linux, as that is pretty much what my main intent is on using it. So now I see what the issue is with that thing. But as I've just mentioned, I'll test it out a little further when I get the opportunity to. Maybe I'll test it out some more later tonight before I call it quits. But yeah, I'll test it out a little further. I'll test it out furthermore and see if we get totally different. See if we get totally different results. So, with that being said, that is going to wrap things up here tonight for our weekly test Wednesday show. Of course, I of course want to take the opportunity to thank all of our special guests who have joined us today. I know Northern Utah was with us briefly. Who else was briefly? I think, let's see, Henry, I believe that's the name of him. Yeah, it was Henry. He was with us too. Yeah, he was with us as well. Actually, for a majority of the time. And of course, Andrew Durnall, who always begs me to join the VC every time we go on the air. Yeah, every time we go on the air, he always begs me to join the VC. I don't know why, but I guess it seems like that's his thing. But I understand that if that's what he wants, that's what he wants to do. But to me, I don't find it necessary. But I mean, I just know that he's there. But I mean, there's a lot of our shows that we don't usually do VCs on anyway. I mean, this is really the only show where we do Discord voice calls. We don't do it on any other program. I mean, Roblox, we don't do it on there. Minecraft, I mean, we barely even do VC on our network in the first place. We barely even do it at all. If we were to do a VC, that would mainly happen off air. So, yeah, that would mainly happen off air. But getting back to the point here, so yeah, Andrew Durnall. I know Brian Schlip was with us a little late than usual, but I think that's all. The Dimitri was with us as well, mainly for the severe weather event. But yeah, that element sound you heard over Yahtzee was a Lembine trying to keep us on the air for much longer, to keep us on the air for longer. But I mean, as much as I'd like that to be the case, I might end up getting back to him off air. Although I did say I was going to send him the screenshots of what I turned my loggers into for April Fools this year. So as I've just said, I will be setting everything back. I'm going to set everything back before I go to bed tonight. So meaning everything. So meaning everything where it said Yugi and Yuma, I'm going to set those back to the way they normally are. And I'm sure John is going to set his logger back to the way it was. In terms of a different call sign, I do not think he's going to change it because he seems to like the Alpine name, but I understand that he likes it, but I'll still interpret it as WJON because that's really the station. So oh yeah, I gotta say, this was a fun little April Fool's joke to try on my logger this year. So I guess we'll see what next year we'll have in store when we do April Fools again. Who knows what it'll be? Maybe we'll theme it to maybe we'll just theme it to Lembine stuff. Who knows? Who knows what ideas I'll have, but I guess we'll have to wait another 365 days before we do that again. So yeah, it's going to be quite a while before we do this again, but I just wanted to make the most of it this year. And I'd say mostly a success, but yeah, it's going to be fun listening to all this stuff again after, even after April Fool's is, all said and done. So, yeah, with that being said, I had a lot of fun today. I really want to get to work with Minecraft tomorrow, so I'm going to use this final hour tonight to get that website all polished up and see what other things I can take care of. Like, I'm probably not going to test that other thing out tonight. I'm probably going to wait on that until tomorrow night, as I've said, because I want to get the next set of signs for that Minecraft route up. I want to play around with Yu-Gi-Oh tonight because I was not able to do that last night because of how long that Minecraft sign thing took and how I had to put all the monitors in for today, for tomorrow, and of course finishing up the severe weather event and Weather Radio Canada's permanent shutdown to complete that mini-series and everything. So I really want to play around with Yu-Gi-Oh tonight, so I really, really want to. So Yeah, with that being said, as I've just said, I'll see what else I can get done tonight here before I go to bed. And then we will be back with you again tomorrow afternoon at around 3 p.m. or so when we do our backyard baseball game for this week. And once again, we will not be able to do coverage for this enhanced risk event. So, but of course, WPLD will be on the air covering the entire event, and everything that goes through it from start to finish. And I will have to take a look and see if I need to split any monitors again over to the secondary. Yeah, we'll see. If I have to split anything over to the if I have to move any of those monitors over to the secondary, I'll be more than happy to move them over. But for now, we'll try it on one, and if it doesn't work, we'll move some over to the secondary, and we'll have it handle everything from there, like we did tonight. So again, we'll be back tomorrow for our backyard baseball game at 3 p.m. Central Time. But until then, thanks to all our special guests. Thanks to all of you for joining us tonight. I'm Mr. Planfall, and we wish all of you a very pleasant good night.